What's up, guys, and welcome back for another beginners, video. This one I'm going to be kind of going over items and like drop chances, kind of like a general overview of the gear that you'll find in Diablo, and explain things like item rarity, drop chances based on difficulty, and then probably end off talking about common stats per slot that your character will get. Common stats or common stats on like your hands, and common stats on like helms and stuff like that. Kind of like general information about like what to kind of look for, expectations, and everything like that. Alright, so starting off with just like item rarity, and like there's many different types of items that you're going to find when you're doing like rifts or, any sort of bounties or just kind of running around farming, right? And everything in Diablo, I usually try to pick up everything that I can because it all ends up being useful in some way, whether it be like as the actual item itself, or if you're gonna like break it down by salvaging so that you can manipulate other items in the future. Your first type of item that you'll find is going to be like white items. These are going to be considered common, and when you salvage these, we're just going to close all. This is your material tab, but when you salvage white items, they're going to result in giving you reusable parts, and you can salvage stuff from the blacksmith and everything like that. The next level of rarity up beyond that is going to be your magical items. These are blue, and they'll have like common items don't have any stats other than like armor on them and things, but like blue is when you kind of start getting some stats on there to help promote your character a little bit. And then the next one above that is going to be rare. Rare is going to break down into veiled crystal, and they're color coded, so it's kind of like easy to keep track of. Rare is going to have a little bit more stats than like a magical item will, as you go up. And then the next the next section, the next rarity that you'll get is what is considered legendaries, right? And there's different types of legendaries, which I'll go over. But like this would be like your normal legendary, right? It's gonna have the most amount of stats on it, and it also is gonna have a legendary power, right? The text at the very bottom of this tooltip, as you can see, that's in like orange, where like the wraps of clarity say your hatred generators reduce the damage taken, right? This is considered a legendary power. This is a special ability that this item either is going to enhance an ability, or it's going to give you increased damage. It's going to have some sort of effect on your character as kind of like a passive or like active ability. If you hold down control, you can see just like other stats on gear, your legendary power can also roll between a minimum and a maximum number. So like these wraps of clarity, they're a 42 out of 50%. So that's, keep in mind, that's what legendary powers mean, and that's kind of what you can extract when you get into the cube. But I'm going to do a cube video, a really in-depth cube video down the road. The next level up, the next type of legendary is going to be the set item. These are going to be green when they drop on the ground. And the way set items work is when you're wearing a certain number of the pieces of the set, you'll get certain abilities. So like on the character I'm using right now, you can see I'm wearing all 6 pieces of this set. So all that green text at the bottom, all those are active, right? So if I like take these boots off, then you see that like last ability down there, it like turns off, So if you're not wearing the full set, or if you're not wearing 6 pieces, you don't get the last bonus. If I start taking off these set pieces, you can see these like abilities, they start to kind of dim out, which means that they're not active. Diablo 3 is really a lot of the builds in this game are based on based in and around these set bonuses. They're really, really powerful. Once you get a full set going, your damage and everything is just going to skyrocket. Just like with other like these legendaries and stuff like that, there's different like tiers beyond that as well. So this is what would be considered a normal legendary, and then this one right here, same item. But see, this one has a gold border. This is going to be considered an ancient, right? Ancients will roll a little bit higher, min-max on their stats like armor and stuff like that. So like this wraps of clarity right here. See how it has like the dexterity on it can roll from 416 to 500. And then over here, this wraps of clarity, the dexterity can roll from 550 to 650, right? So there's a little bit of a higher ceiling when it comes to like ancients. And also, ancients are the only items that you can augment. But that's another topic I'll cover in the Kanai's Cube video later on. Beyond ancient, there's another tier, which is primal ancient. Primal ancients and ancients are pretty much the same. The only thing that's different about primals is every stat is going to roll at its maximum value. So just like this, Wraps of Clarity, the dexterity rolls from like 550 to 650. Whereas, a primal, if you dropped a primal Wraps of Clarity, the dexterity is going to be 650. Every single stat on a primal is going to be the highest value that it can possibly be. And since that set items are still considered legendaries, like this would be like a normal set item. And then you have the same thing, right? You have an ancient set item, right? Higher value rolls on higher values will roll on this. And then you have, primal, primal ancient, set items as well. Same properties. The stats will roll max. And whenever you actually enchant primals at the Mystic and you replace stats on gear, with a primal, they'll always roll max as well. So that's kind of the different type of items that you can find in the game and everything like that. And just like I was talking about before, I pick up pretty much everything when I'm doing rifts. I pick up rare items, I pick up magical items, I pick up it all, right? Because when you salvage these, they all break down into these crafting components. Crafting components are extremely important to kind of stockpile, because when you do find an item that you want to modify, or you want to use a cube to modify items or do things, all of these crafting materials are going to come into play. So it's not enough to just find all the right pieces of gear for your class. You need to also think about, the crafting material that you need to stockpile in order to kind of really get a lot of items, optimized as much as possible. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is just drop chance, right? Whenever you're playing, what is the percentage that you're going to get or you're going to see some of these, items. Primals are going to be the lowest drop chance, by far. Ancients, even below that. So let's kind of organize this a little bit. I'm going to try to walk you through it a little bit. So legendaries, these are just normal legendaries. So this would be your category right here. Let's get rid of these. Your normal legendaries, which would just be regular legendary items, regular set items. If you're out doing bounties and things like that, which I'm going to call world drop, right? At Torment 1, which is the difficulty, Torment 1, you're going to have a 15% drop chance for either of these. Every time you go above in difficulty, above Torment 1, it's going to get a little bit better. Up to the point where if you're playing Torment 16, the drop chance is going to be 1,221%. So about 1,200, a little bit of over 1,200% at Torment 16 to drop legendary items. Now, Ancients are a little bit different in the fact that they're about a 10% chance to become Ancient. So if you're running at Torment 16 and you have a 1,200%, give or take, chance to drop a legendary item, right? Every time a legendary item drops, right? Think about it this way. Go over here. So you're killing stuff, right? And every time a legendary drops, boom, it hits the ground. Once it hits the ground, or it comes out of a chest or something, it has a 10% chance on that point to be Ancient at Torment 10. Okay? At Torment 1, it's I think 1%, right? And it's around 10% at Torment 10, right? So basically every time a legendary item drops, depending on what difficulty it is, it's going to have up to a 10% chance to be Ancient at that point. Same thing goes with the primals, right? Primals work a little bit differently. We've had primals for, several seasons now, for a while, almost 2 years. So it's kind of another layer of RNG, which is, random number generator, right? So if you think about it this way, it's every time a legendary drops, has a 10% chance of being Ancient. Every time, that procs and it becomes an Ancient, of that you have a 1% chance of that to be primal. What this really means in working numbers is in my experience, about every 500 legendary items you see will be a primal. Okay. And that is, the stuff you find in rifts, so if you go over here and run Nephilim rifts or greater rifts, and you're just farming a lot of items. You're seeing a lot of items. You're, running rifts. You're, using all your blood shards from Kadala. Basically the idea is the more items you can have your character see in a short amount of time, the better it is to get primals. But it's still going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 400. You're going to get one primal basically from every 4 to 500 items seen, legendary items seen, that is. I usually tell people don't worry too much, don't focus too much on primals, because most of the time when they drop, they're probably not going to be usable for the build you're trying to put together. They're just kind of like a nice little bonus when it does happen. Ancients are probably, more important to focus on, because when you're doing like, when you're really trying to like, progress in game, you're going to want to put augments. Like, so my gloves here, you can see these have dexterity, vitality, crit damage, crit chance, and then it has an additional 330 dexterity on it, because that's an augment. Augments is basically the way of like adding more main stat to an item using a Kenai's Q recipe. You can only put, bonus main stat on an item if it's ancient. So if you've got every item you have for your build, you want to start like trying to like replacing those with, ancient versions to, go to that next tier progression. And all it really means is you're just gonna have to like farm a lot, just see a lot of items, use all your blood shards with Kadala, things like that. All right, so kind of like another thing to note here when it comes to like ancients and things like that. Ancients will occur, like I said, about 10% at Torment 10 whenever a normal legendary drops. But the one thing that is interesting, if you don't know this already, ancients actually have a flat 10% chance to occur whenever you're using Kadala, or if you're crafting items, or if you're using any sort of recipe to generate, like if you're like reforging a legendary, regardless of difficulty, you have a 10% chance. It's a flat 10% chance to get an ancient, when you're reforging or if you're upgrading a rare item. Whenever you convert sets, it looks like it says here, you don't get ancients at all. So just keep that in mind, reforge legendary, upgrading rare items, getting anything from Kadala, making anything from any of the artisans, right? You'll have a flat, regardless of difficulty, 10% chance to get an ancient. All right, so this is a little like, chart that like, kind of does like an overview of difficulty and like things that are scaled by it. And like I said before, like at Torment 1, you have a 15% chance to get a legendary drop, but then also inside Rifts, you have a 44% chance, right? So like Torment 1, 15% right here. If you go up to like Torment 16 and or GR75, you have, 1,221% chance, but then also inside of a Rift, right? If you're running an actual Rift, you have like a 1760, okay? The thing you can take away from this is always be pushing the envelope when it comes to, farming, right? As your gear gets better, push up in difficulty. Don't stagnate, at a certain difficulty, because, the higher difficulty you go, the better chance you have of getting items, and those items, increase your damage, and you keep going, right? It's like this snowball effect and everything like that. I'll put all this information in the description so you can kind of reference it a little bit easier. Next thing I want to talk about is just, kind of giving you like a good overview of, item stats and like, kind of like some tips and tricks on like, completing sets and things like that. So we'll talk about sets first, okay? This is my seasonal character, so I don't like really store a whole lot of stuff on my seasonal character, but on my non-season, I have every set for every class. It's not very difficult to do. A strategy that I use when I'm running rifts, when you're running rifts, you're going to get blood shards that you can use at Kadala. Whenever I'm trying to like put together a set, when I'm ever trying to complete a set for a build, usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all of my blood shards on boots, okay? Every one of them. And I'm going to just, buy boots like a crazy person, okay? Now we'll illustrate this actually. I'm going to put all this stuff away. Like these are like primals I've found this season, nothing too crazy. Just some stuff I'm holding on to for, potentially other builds and everything. But it's really important to kind of know what a decent strategy is for trying to complete a set, right? Because like even if you have a good build, you want to try something else, you need to find a way to efficiently put it together, right? We'll use these mechanical pauldrons as an example. So let's just say we're in here and we're just like buying a bunch of pauldrons, right? And if you have like multiple pauldrons of the same set, that's just fine, right? And like I was talking about before, you want to like stockpile crafting mats and everything like that. But what I normally do is I'll go to the cube and go to the skill of Nefer. This is a convert set item. It uses 10 death breath, which you can get from normal rifts, And every time you salvage a legendary, you get a Forgotten Soul. So it's going to take 10 of those as well. So imagine my, inventory's full. I was just using blood shards just to buy, a crap ton of shoulders. And I have like, 5 shoulders for the same set. I can go in here, and when I convert set piece, it's going to give me one of the other pieces of that set that I didn't put in the cube, right? So now I have the boots. So imagine I now have the boots and I have the shoulders. I take another shoulder piece, I put it in here, and I keep re-rolling it until, it's neither of the pieces that I have. And this is probably the quickest way to, get a complete set. And all you have to do, the reason I do boots actually, is because boots have the lowest chance of variance when, it comes to like, trying to like nail down sets. There's a lot of different chest piece in this game. There's a lot of different gloves that are not set. There's a lot of different helms that are not sets. There's a ton of belts. There's a ton of shoulders. And there are boots that are not sets, but in my experience, I've found it much easier to just roll boots and then just keep, every time I get a duplicate boot, I just convert it into the next piece of set, and then I just keep going. This allows me to complete the set actually really, really quickly. And then if you need to go a little bit faster than that, you can even take the rare boots that you get from Kadala if you have a lot of mats, and then you can actually go over and do upgrade rare item for a chance to actually get, the item of the set that you're looking for as well. So it's kind of like a symbiotic, kind of idea where you run your rifts to get your, your materials and your blood shards. Use blood shards to like, get, to narrow down the slot that you're trying to build for. And then you use the cube to kind of manipulate even further beyond that. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is we're going to go over just kind of like each gear slot. I'm going to talk about just kind of like common, stats that you're going to find, in these. Because not every slot is going to, have the same type of stat that can roll on it. Some pieces are more considered like toughness and survivability pieces, and some pieces are just considered more offensive. And I'll put a list of all this stuff in the description as well. So we'll start off with just like weapons and offhands in general, right? Common things you're going to find on weapons and offhands in general are going to be like damage percent plus, attack speed, area damage, cooldown reduction, resource cost reduction, life per kill, life per hit. And you also find sockets on them as well. But you should never like have just a native socket, Always use a gift. I'll show you what a gift is. It's one of these, right? You're going to find these just by normal. They're going to drop like normal items. And what this does is allows you just to add a socket to a weapon. So like, for instance, if you find a weapon that already has a socket, you can go to the Mystic. You can, enchant that socket off into something else and then use a gift here to just add a socket as well. So that way you're not wasting a stat slot, because weapons and armor can only have so many stats on them. So really important for, weapons and stuff like that. And then your offhands, right, they roll kind of like the same amount of same type of things that weapons do, but the one thing offhand will do is they can roll like skill percentages. Like this weapon has like a hungering arrow damage increase, right? And there are some legendaries that are special, like Vala's Bequest here. This natively, when you just drop it from, just normal, it'll have like strafe damage on it, which is kind of like a unique thing for that item and things like that. Next, let's go over like armor pieces here. Your head's going to be kind of like a hybrid, right? It's going to mainly have dexterity, vitality, very commonly, and you're going to want most of the time, crit chance on this item as well. So if you find an item that has crit, and dexterity, or like crit main stat and then like a skill, that's going to be very universal, right? So that's like really common, stats you can find, just, crit, skill, and you can also get all res on this item as well. Common shoulder, stats you can get are, life percentage, cooldown reduction, resource cost reduction, resistance to all elements. You can get area damage on shoulders as well as you can get skill percentages, and then also bonus armor. And then for your chest piece, torso, common things on here are going to be all resist. You can get reduced damage from elites, which, a lot of builds will utilize. You can get life percentage as well as bonus armor. And then, you have your bracers. Bracers are kind of like a really important piece because they can roll actually elemental damage percentage on here. So like on these, you can see they have a cold skill damage, 20%. Really important to like, you know, kind of optimize, you know, a build based on like whatever, you know, element your skills are using. Another common thing you're going to find on bracers is going to be crit chance. And then sometimes, depending on the build, you know, it's either going to be vitality, life percentage, or it's going to be all res. Moving on to your hands. Hands are, you know, your hands, your gloves are a really big, you know, offensive piece. You're going to get things like crit damage, crit chance, area damage. You can get attack speed. You can get, you know, all res is defensive. You can get cooldown reduction. You can even get resource cost reduction and even bonus armor. And all these things, most commonly, you're going to see builds. They're going to run like a, you know, crit damage, crit chance, and then like either attack speed or area damage. You know, it's going to be like, most commonly, you're going to probably have like a double crit on gloves, most likely. And then for your belt is going to be more or less considered, you know, it's kind of a hybrid slot, but it could also be considered more of a defensive thing. You're going to have, you know, dexterity, vitality. You're going to have bonus armor, life percentage. And then you can also get like, you know, skill. Like this, like for demon hunters, like for most classes, like, you know, belts are going to roll like a generator or signature. Like they're going to have like a skill that's not going to necessarily be a damage dealer. Like, you know, I get Hungering Arrow on this, and it's going to roll for, you know, this guy. It's going to roll basically any of these, right? These primaries. There's going to be a primary skill percentage on your belt. And then your legs are kind of, you know, definitely on more of the defensive side, right? You're going to get things like all res, and you can get skill plus on here as well. Primary skill plus on here, and then bonus armor. And then for your boots, you know, you're looking at like dexterity, you're looking at like main stat, vitality, all res, bonus armor. But you can also get offensive skill, or not offensive skill, but non-primary skill on here. So things like multi-shot damage, or so like for instance, you can get straight multi-shot, cluster arrow, you know, stuff like that on your boots, right? You know, in this build, the build I'm doing right now, it's like, you know, I'm not using any of those kind of abilities. This is like a primary base build. So yeah, we're just rolling bonus armor on those. And then kind of going over some of the common stats for, you know, jewelry pieces, right? You know, rings are, you know, most commonly you're going to see rings that are going to be like crit damage, crit chance, and a socket. But like some of the other things that can roll on rings, like I said, crit chance, crit damage, you can get cooldown reduction, you can get resource cost reduction, you get attack speed, you can get area damage, you get life percentage, and then also you can get a socket. If you find like a really good ring that has like crit on it, or it has the ability to have like a crit damage, crit chance, and a socket from the Mystic, if you like roll one thing off to get double crit, that's going to be very, very useful. Most builds are going to run some sort of like crit damage, crit chance, socket ring, you know, so those kind of things are like really worth holding on to. As far as your amulet goes, right, your amulet's going to not be too much different from your rings. The one thing about the unique about amulets is it can also roll elemental damage percentage. So just like on my bracers, where it has cold damage, or cold skill deals 20% more damage, right, and this rolls from 15 to 20%. You can get the same thing on amulets, right? So you get, and that's what I'm saying whenever I talk about like elemental damage percentage, you know, elemental skill damage percentage, you know, so, you know, amulets can get that. They can get crit chance, they can get damage, they can get resource cost reduction, cooldown, attack speed. They can also get area damage, life, and a socket. Most commonly, just like rings, you know, a really good amulet is going to be, you know, some sort of elemental skill damage percentage, like cold skills 20 plus crit damage plus crit chance plus a socket, right? If you can't get elemental damage plus both the crits, you know, you want to have a socket, because like the way legendary gems work in Diablo 3 is you can only put them in jewelry pieces. And so, you know, it's, you know, highly advised that you run your character with 3 legendary gems. And that means you have to have a socket in both your rings, and you have to have a socket in your amulet. And then you have to just try to fit as many of the double crits or like the elemental skill damage into those pieces in addition to those sockets. So if you find like a really good amulet that has the ability to have crit damage, crit chance, and elemental damage with a socket, it's probably worth holding on to. So that's kind of like, the last thing I want to touch on is just kind of like salvaging, right? So if you go to your, you know, blacksmith here, this guy, and this is in adventure mode, right? Like, you know, you need to salvage pretty much everything, right? unless it's something, you know, that's, you know, really good that you're going to use for a later build. But picking up rare items, picking up magical items and normal items, when you salvage those all kind of like go into these three crafting materials. And whenever you do anything, right, whenever you do anything in Diablo, when it comes to like items or cube stuff, it's going to use some sort of like crafting material. As you can see, like just to upgrade a rare item, you're using 50 veiled crystals, some arcane dust, you know, death breath, all this stuff. Like everything that you're going to do to kind of like manipulate and like optimize your gear is going to be based around having that material. Same with like enchanting, right? If I go in here and enchant, see, it's going to use, you know, these crafting materials. Or if I'm going to go over here and, you know, make rings, craft rings, like most jewelry is kind of weird though, because it like just uses other jewelry. But if you go like the blacksmith here, you just pick random stuff, like everything that you craft inside the blacksmith, any sort of item based thing is all going to be based around this crafting material stuff. That's why I advise whenever you're like playing normal rifts, like, you know, if you go over here to the obelisk and you run a normal rift to get like, you know, keystones to run greater rifts, pick up everything you can. There's no time limit on Nephilim rifts. You can go in there and pick up everything. You know, when your inventory's full, you go back to town, you salvage it all, and you just keep going, right? And another thing that I tell people, like when you're trying to like farm like ancients or they're trying to like farm primals, even though you shouldn't really be like, you know, focus firing down on primals, treat town like it's lava, right? What that means is like whenever I'm sitting here and I'm running greater rifts or normal rifts, I'll like greater rifts for instance, I'll sit there and run a greater rift back to back to back, usually 3 to 4 of them, okay, until my inventory is full and my blood shards are near max. Then I stop and I go in there and I like identify everything and I, you know, salvage everything, kind of like clean up, and then I go again, right? Because like the idea behind getting good gear is actually seeing a lot of gear, you know, per hour and everything. So I guess the moral of that is like, you know, salvage, pick up everything you can. Most things that you're gonna pick up, you're gonna salvage. Salvage about 95% of items is definitely, you know, that's gonna help you a lot. Just having all those materials and just being, you know, prepared. You know, when something good does drop, you have all of the items needed to, you know, manipulate it and, you know, kind of contour it to your build. So that's gonna be it for this video. I'll leave, you know, timestamps and stuff in the description. I'll also leave my notes in the description as well, so you can reference back to, you know, all the stats and stuff that I was talking about and like the drop chances I was talking about and everything like that. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the subscribe button for more Diablo content. Hit the like button. Leave me a comment down below. Also check out these other videos that I think you might be interested in. And like always, peace out. See you guys next time.